Please bear with me. We will be starting in just one moment. For now, please enjoy some fat material. Incels, or involuntary celibates, are a hot topic on my channel, especially as of late. Incel ideology, or involuntary celibacy, grew as an online misogynistic subculture and is commonly characterized by a hatred or blame against us evil women for an inability to find a romantic or sexual partner. Because yes, those are two separate things. Incels are known to promote a misogynistic ideology, often through online message boards. We had a large discussion about the toxic language used on these forums earlier today, so go and check that out if you haven't yet, but after this stream, of course. As a society, all of us hope that the incels stay within these boards, their so-called safe spaces, and that they do not venture out into the world full of rage and hate towards women. However, what happens when incels commit murders? Should these murders constitute as hate crimes against women? So right now, we are going to be discussing a couple of cases where incels have committed murder, all local here, yay us, and talk about whether or not the crime should be considered hate crimes, terrorist attacks, or just crimes, like just murders. So without further ado, I will roll my intro and then we are going to get right into it. Hello, Joe. Hello, Iconic. Good to see you. So I'm going to just get right into this. I found a couple of really great articles because my husband was watching global news and then called me into the room and said, "Come here, hurry up, quick, quick. They're talking about incels on the news. You need to come watch this." So I did. And when I did, I was a little bit surprised as to what I heard. But I feel like first we need to rewind before I talk about what happened today with this Toronto incel murder case. I think we need to go all the way back in time and really talk about what happened as this occurred a few years ago. So it says here in this article, which, by the way, this article was from September of 2022, and it's called "Toronto Spa Killer Pleads Guilty to Murder in Deadly Sword Attack, Cites Van Attacker as, quote unquote, inspiration." It's from CBC News. And it says, the man behind an incel-inspired attack at a Toronto massage parlor 2 years ago, so in 2020, has pleaded guilty to charges of murder and attempted murder, citing the man responsible for the city's deadly van attack as his inspiration. The accused was only 17 years old at the time of this killing. And I know that since we have been talking about these guys out here that give advice to the young ones, since we've been talking about NoFap, since we've been talking about incels, I keep talking about how I'm worried about our younger generation. And this is a great example as to why. Because younger people that see this content and take in this awful propaganda could end up potentially doing something like this. So he was 20 now, and he made his plea at Ontario Superior Court before Justice Suhail Akhtar on Wednesday morning, again in September of 2022, where court heard he had been thinking of carrying out his violent actions for months. Slumped forward with his head down, the accused spoke softly as he replied yes to the judge, who explained that pleading guilty would waive his rights to a trial and an appeal. Because here you cannot plead guilty for a crime and then later on try and take that back and appeal it. I don't know if you can in the US either. When his charges were read aloud, he answered plainly guilty to both. When he was asked why he identified as an incel, he told the police in a statement, "You don't choose to become an incel. You are born one." So I think it would be fair to say that this young gentleman here was black-pilled. He thinks he's doomed from the second he was born. Then they go on to say the plea does not cover the associated terror charges against the accused, which were added in the months after the February 2020 killing of 24-year-old Ashley Noel Arzaga and stabbing of another man and woman at the Crown Spa in the city's West End. And that is the city of Toronto. This occurred in Toronto. Arzaga suffered at least 42 sharp force injuries, including 15 defensive wounds, according to an agreed statement of facts. The case is believed to mark the first time terror charges have ever been laid in connection with an act fueled by incel ideology. And part of that is because this whole incel ideology thing is still very new to mainstream media. Unless you were hanging out on the dark web for years, you probably have not heard about it for a while. It's only really been in the last decade that people have really been talking about incels openly. The van attack killer, Alec Manassian, was never charged with terrorism. The judge who found him guilty noted that he mentioned in some interviews that he tied his actions to incel ideology for notoriety. So here, of course, is a picture of the shooting that happened in Toronto's North End. And it was in February of 2020 that this happened. So one of the women, Ashley Noel Arzaga, she was dead. And there was another woman and a man that suffered severe injuries because they were stabbed so much. And yeah, the young incel who did this, 17 years old. They talk about what it is to be an incel, and they say the term gained widespread attention in 2018 when a man who posted about a so-called incel rebellion drove a van down a sidewalk in Toronto, which killed 10 people and injured 16 others. And for some reason, this man, along with people such as Elliot Rodger, are seen as heroes to the incels. They really, really look up to them. Like they did something good for their subculture or something. Like, yes, because being seen as a bunch of murdering crazies would help you all get girlfriends, I'm sure. The girls will be lined up now, fellas. Good thinking. So they say, according to an agreed statement of facts, the woman who survived the attack managed to seize a nearly half-meter-long sword from the attacker after she had been stabbed repeatedly. Now, this woman is badass. This is someone I want to be friends with, and then they can come to the store with me at nighttime. Now I'll be well protected. She then turned the weapon on the man and stabbed him back, which is what ended this crime spree of his. If she had not have done this, he probably would have continued to stab as many people as he possibly could, As he attacked her, the teen told her, "Die, die, die," and called her a stupid whore. After stabbing the man, the woman then managed to go to a neighboring business and ask someone inside to call the police. Court was shown a 20-minute compilation of surveillance video in which the young man was seen stabbing Arzaga, the massage parlor's receptionist, to death. The footage begins with the teen leaving his home on foot less than 2 kilometers away from the spa and showed in graphic detail the moment when he pulled out the sword, killing this poor woman. So they go on to say that the family members and the loved ones of the victims were obviously visibly emotional during this, and they were hugging one another. I can't imagine being one of them. It must have been absolutely horrible and traumatizing and disgusting to watch. I'm honestly sorry that they've had to go through this. CBC News spoke with the woman who survived, who said she hoped the judge gave the accused the maximum sentence given the evidence against him. I mean, when you have video surveillance, a lot of times that's all you'll need. The woman cannot be named as her identity is protected under a publication ban. So here in Canada, oftentimes you'll get what's called a publication ban, which means that whenever a publication, or even like someone like myself here doing YouTube from Canada, discusses the case, we cannot say any identifying information of the person. And this is why people broke mine when it came to my court case. If there's a publication ban, it's to protect the victim. Asked what it was like to see the surveillance video, and she replied, "I've seen it a few times already. I'm strong." And you know she is, because she's the one that took the sword and stabbed him back. The woman said she expected being in the same room as the attacker would have been a lot harder than it was, adding she was grateful for all the support she has received and continue to support her. Court heard the accused was found with a handwritten note following the attack. And what this note read says everything. It said, "Long live the rebellion of incels," which absolutely horrifies me. I have no clue what that's supposed to mean. Please stop rebelling. We don't need any of that. As for why he was carrying the note, which good question to ask the dude, I gotta add, he told the police, "I wanted everyone to find it. I wanted the world to know that people like us exist and it's not really fair. I want a girlfriend." I imagine it went something like that, you know. Court also heard the sword used as the murder weapon was inscribed with the words, "Thought Slayer." How's that for a superhero name? Bum, 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 bum! In comes Thought Slayer, here to slay all the thoughts. Love it. Love it. And thought, I'm told, stands for that hoe over there. And it's a derogatory term used against women. I'm called one every day. I don't really care, but apparently it upsets some people. When one of the responding paramedics asked him what happened, court heard he replied that he'd wanted to kill everyone in the building and he's happy he got one. We're all happy that he only got one and wished he didn't even get one person. It is very much a shame that someone had to lose their life over this, especially since that woman has nothing to do with this kid or why he's an incel or why he's been rejected by all the women he likes or anything whatsoever. Completely innocent people being attacked by an incel. The accused said he did not remember making that statement, but then he also didn't dispute saying it, which is good because I'm sure that they could have proven it if need be, right? In his statement to police, the then teen, remember, he was 17 when he said all this, but I don't know if his views have changed. We'll have to see in the next article, which is an update from today. So the then teen, 17 at the time, told police he did not expect to be alive at the end of the day, and he thought police would have killed him. I mean, I guess we're all a little surprised he didn't commit suicide by cop, but he didn't. It wasn't worth it. My life is ruined now, he said. I don't know if that counts as remorse necessarily, but hopefully Bubba will be his girlfriend in the pen. He also noted he was scared of how other inmates might treat him behind bars. I hope that they treat him like shit. The funny thing is, even to other criminals that hurt women and children are considered scum. So they get beat up in prison for that. Like, they're the scummiest of the scum. You know what I'm saying? A judge will now determine if the accused actions meet the bar of terrorist activity. And again, he was the first person to be charged as an incel terrorist. They say here, and we're going to look into it a little bit deeper in a moment, the criminal code defines terrorism as an act carried out for a political, religious, or ideological purpose, objective, or cause. So a lot of people are wondering, does incel count as an ideological purpose, objective, or cause, especially if he's, writing notes that say rebel for the incels, and things like this? It's meant to intimidate the public by causing or attempting to cause death or serious bodily harm through violence, endangering health and safety, or disrupting an essential service, which again, there was a lot of violence here. It did endanger 3 people's lives. One of them unfortunately lost their life, and it was even done at a business. So for a lot of people, it ticks off all the boxes. They say Crown prosecutors are pushing for an adult sentence while the defense is arguing the actions were not terrorism and is seeking a youth sentence. And a youth sentence means that, he would only be in jail probably for a few years. So people obviously have an issue with that, as I'm sure you can imagine. Now, he is a violent offender that committed murder, so they could put him away for, I think the most is like 15 or something. But again, is that a big enough charge? Is that a long enough sentence? That becomes the question. But the biggest question that occurred here is, was it a terrorist act? Based on what I just read, you would think that it would be, but let's just look at this for real. So in Canada, Section 83.01 of the Criminal Code defines terrorism as an act committed in whole or in part for a political, religious, or ideological purpose, objective, or cause with the intention of intimidating the public. With regard to its security, including its economic security, or compelling a person, a government, or a domestic or an international organization to do or to refrain from doing any act. Activities recognized as criminal within this context include death and bodily harm with the use of violence, which that occurred, endangering a person's life, again, 3 of them, risk posed to the health and safety of the public, significant property damage, and interference or disruption of essential services, facilities, or systems. Symptoms, yeah, that's what it is. Facilities or systems. So, based on that, a lot of people were like, this should be considered a terrorist act. I mean, technically, it's a terrorist attack against women. And that's what a lot of people wanted to consider it. So, what happened is they went to court to see. Joe says, send him to Churchill. Let him become polar bear poop. It's funny you bring up Churchill, Joe, because after this, I'm going to be uploading a video where Warhammer, our favorite incel, quotes Churchill. Yeah, a couple times. It's great fun. So keep Churchill on the mind. But basically, they were going to court with this gentleman to decide if he should be charged with a terrorist act along with the murder charges. Today, the case was heard. So, We're going to take 1 second to do a little ad break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about what happened today, as well as just briefly go over a couple other things. The content on this channel has been brought to you by Tiny Dinger Condoms, a YouTube streamer's favorite brand. Now, these condoms don't only have straight couples in mind, but gay couples too. And they are ribbed for the pleasure of all the Joker fanatics out there. Have you got fed up of wanting to chase e-girls who look like this, but end up with e-girls who actually look like? Are you a father who refuses to pay child support because you can't afford a burrito? Maybe you found out your buddy gets turned on by your pic. So in full inceldom, you began a relationship with your bestie because both of you love diaper play and make a fabulous couple. These Tiny Dinger Condoms has you two in mind and now comes in dark ninja size. Try it out with gay lovers and find out what the male G-spot is really all about. Get a pack of Tiny Dinger Condoms, ribbed for his pleasure, with special anal G-spot locator. We know you'll be all about it. Located at Rexall, Shoppers Drug Mart, your local CVS pharmacy, and hidden in your favorite streamer's nightstand because they're all the same. On sale for the holidays soon, so stay tuned. Now back to our regular programming. So, before allegedly killing 10 people with a van in Toronto, Alec Minassian, I have no clue how to say that, but Alec here appeared to have posted a message on Facebook that linked him to a toxic online community of misogynists that has become the source of a growing pattern of violence. The Facebook post, which authorities who spoke with NBC News believe came from Alec, links Alec to an online community known as Incels. Oh my God, Incels. Oh no, which as we know is short for involuntary celibate. The Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, CBC, also reported that Facebook confirmed the authenticity of the post. Self-described incels congregate mostly online, meeting in forums and message boards like Reddit and 4chan, and its offshoot site 8chan to discuss their hopelessness with women in posts that are peppered with racist and misogynistic rants. We have fun reading them here, though. Chuds are incel speak for good-looking men, who incels believe can't be one of them. Stacy's are the women who find chuds attractive. The Facebook message also refers admiringly to Elliot Rodger, who, like I keep saying, is their god, and he killed 6 people in Isla Vista, California in 2014, and he left behind a manifesto and videos detailing his sexual frustration as the motivation for his violence. Guess who has a copy of a bunch of the manifesto and has been reading through it for months now? Yep. And people wonder why I go fucking insane. Rodger has since emerged as a source of inspiration among the incel community. Private Recruit Minassian Infantry 00010 wishing to speak to Sergeant 4chan, please. C2324961. The Incel Rebellion has already begun. We will overthrow all the Chads and Stacys. All hail the Supreme Gentleman, Elliot Rodger, is what Alec here posted on his Facebook. His post spread quickly among the Incel community, many of whom rushed to embrace him. I hope this guy wrote a manifesto because he could be our next new saint, one poster wrote on incel.me. While some posters questioned whether Alec 25 was a fake cell, which is the term for someone whose average looks disqualifies him from community membership. Imagine being one of those. Imagine being disqualified from the incels. I feel like that's what Warhammer. That's what happened to Warhammer. Most hailed him as a hero of the movement. Spread that name. Speak of his sacrifice for our cause. Worship him, for he gave his life for our future, one poster wrote. It's the incel Jesus, ladies and gentlemen. Another poster wondered whether Alec might have been acting on his own March call to action for incels to commit mass murder and serial rapes, a post on incels.me which has since been removed. I want to see some mass food poisoning deaths, maybe a pipe bomb or two, or hopefully somebody finally uses a fucking truck to just ram down women during a school parade or something. Mix it up a little, wrote Black Pill Press, whose username is a nod to the black pill, lingo in the incel community for coming to the realization that a woman will never have sex with them, especially when they're writing stuff like that on message boards. Violence perpetuated by men connected to misogynistic online communities has become systemic enough to warrant attention from organizations that track hate groups. So if it's tracking these organizations, it has to at least be a hate crime then, right? I mean, where does incels that murder people, where does it fall? Is it a hate crime? Is it a terrorist attack? Is it just murder? What is it? That's what we want to figure out here. The Southern Poverty Law Center added a misogynistic organization to their list of hate groups for the first time this year. Sad, but true. The director said that the incel community mostly consists of aggrieved young men who have found a natural home on 4chan and darker parts of Reddit, and Reddit keeps eating them, as much as they can. They say they're young, frustrated white males in their late teens into their early 20s who are having a hard time adjusting to adulthood. I do want to say the one misconception is that they're all white. There are actually incels of other ethnicities, races, cultures, but they just aren't seen as important as the white ones because, they're all racist too. So, of course. They're the same kinds of people you find in white supremacy writ large. They have grievances about the world they've placed onto women and black people. Yes, because they're also very racist. In a news conferences on Tuesday, Toronto Police Services Detective Sergeant Graham Gibson acknowledged that most of Alec's victims were women. That's fair to say, predominantly female, Gibson said of those injured and killed. We go on to blame a bunch of the forums, but again, I feel like Reddit is not really to blame. Like they've tried their best to get rid of it. I don't feel like you can blame Facebook. I don't feel like you can blame Twitter. I don't think that the issue is the social media because, like I keep pointing out, whenever they have their threads taken down, they just go start up their own new website like incels.is. So what's the point? If anything, hopefully they just kind of stay on incels.is. So I think it's unfair to say, that it's the fault of the social media because, again, they do the best they can. All of them are trying to get rid of incels and misogyny and racism as much as possible. I believe that. Alec's visible online footprint is small. He was briefly active on the gaming forum Steam and once released an app through the Android App Store that showed users available parking spaces in Toronto. You would think he would be loaded after that. I'm sure that was necessary. Can we get him to make one for Ottawa, please? This wouldn't be the first time a mass murderer blamed incels for his crimes. The fact that he is an incel, for his crimes. In 2009, before the internet gave incels a known place to congregate, George Sodini walked into an LA fitness gym in Pittsburgh and shot up a women's aerobics class, killed 4 people, including himself. He left behind a blog where he detailed his plans and complained of rejection from women. So, another incel, of course. There are 30 million desirable women in the US, my estimate, and I cannot find one. Not one of them finds me attractive, he wrote. Elliot Roger, who Alec referenced by name in his Facebook post, listed sexual frustration and a hatred for women as his chief motivation for his killing spree. In his post, Elliot Rodger spoke in language common among the incels and pickup communities. Yes, because the pickup communities very tightly knit with incels. Same with the no-fap stuff and etc. Separating men into groups of alphas and betas and reducing women to entitlements that could be won or stolen. Elliot Rodger closed his manifesto with, "All I ever wanted was to love women, and in turn to be loved by them back. Their behavior towards me has only earned my hatred, and rightfully so. I am the true victim in all of this. I am the good guy." When nice guys go wrong, if you will. In 2015, Chris Harper Mercer killed 9 and injured 7 at a community college in Roseburg, Oregon, before turning the gun on himself. In his journal, he wrote, "My whole life has been one lonely enterprise, one loss after another, and here I am, 26, still so young, by the way, with no friends, no job, no girlfriend, a virgin." In his writings, he identified with Elliot Rodger as well as other mass shooters whom he described as people who stand with the gods. A lot of them, for some reason, also tend to look up to the Columbine mass shooters. I'm not really sure why, but maybe they were incels too. Who knows, right? Like, I don't know. But in February, Nicholas Cruz was 19 and he shot and killed 17 students and teachers inside Marjorie Stoneman Douglas High School in Parkland, Florida. And he praised Rodger in a YouTube comment. He said, "Elliot Rodger will not be forgotten." And no, he probably will not. But there is a little synopsis, if you will, of what happened with the other Toronto incel attack with the van, as well as, a list of a few other of the murders that have occurred and a couple of the people that these incels really look up to, like Elliot Rodger, who we are going to do a huge deep dive on in future. But I felt like that really, rounded up. I don't think that's what I wanted to say. Summed up his crimes and gave us enough information to see why it's bad for people to look up to him, Would gays say no thanks to most of the incels? Yes. Probably more so than the women would, if anything, because they're also men and they're probably like, "What's wrong with you? I'm not like this." I was going to ask if they were on Facebook. Yes. They try to find homes everywhere, but like I keep stating, everywhere kicks them away. And this is why they've kind of gone to making their own websites like incels.is and lookism.me and that kind of thing, which, don't worry, we'll be making fun of all of them. So now, without further ado, let's get into, why Queen is on this big rant about incels again tonight on a live stream, bitching about Elliot Rodger and this Alec Massian and some 17-year-old that killed people at a massage parlor. Well, the young man, that 17-year-old there, he was the first person in Canada charged with first-degree murder and attempted murder motivated by terrorism related to the misogynist incel ideology, which the RCMP defines as an ideologically violent extremist movement. While he committed a heinous act, it did not rise to the level of a terrorist offense. Again, I repeat, it did not rise to the level of a terrorist offense, which should be reserved for political and organized crimes. And that's according to defense lawyer Maurice Mattei. He argued it today in Superior Court. The current definition is too broad. And if the court agrees, it could open the floodgates to other cases, Mattei warned Justice Shuhail Akhtar. On February 24th, 2020, the then 17-year-old walked into the Crown Spa in North York wearing sunglasses and concealing the sword beneath a black trench coat. He stabbed someone 42 times and tried to kill another woman who fought him off and survived. And another man, too. When police arrived, they found the murder weapon inscribed with the misogynistic phrase, "Thought Slayer," and a plastic bag in his coat pocket containing a handwritten note that read, "Long live the Incel Rebellion! You say you want a revolution, well, you know." Sorry. He told one of the paramedics that he came to kill everyone in the building, and "I'm happy I got one." What a dumb thing to say. Now he's 21 this year, and his identity is protected under the Youth Criminal Justice Act because when he did the crime, he was still a teenager. He was under the age of 18, and therefore he's still protected. I personally think that since he's 21 now, he shouldn't be, but maybe that's just me. Let me know what you think down below. And he has already pled guilty to first-degree murder and the attempted murder. Under the criminal code, as we read, terrorist activity is defined as something that is committed for a political, religious, or ideological purpose, objective, or cause, with the intention of intimidating the public or a segment of the public. Right? So, does it constitute? To cut to the chase, Akhtar said, it's clear the youth intended to send a message to women in general that they're not safe. So again, some people are arguing this is a terrorist attack against women. When an incel does this, and especially when he says stupid things like, yeah, incel rebellion, it's shut up, Trevor. Trevor's laughing. It is literally like a terrorist attack on women, they're saying, right? So again, this lawyer asked the judge, doesn't that fall into intimidation? This is more than just going out killing random women. And the judge responds, look, not what he said, but what he did. And I don't know if I fully agree with that, but you know, the judge is the one that matters here. The judge indicated he will advise the defense and prosecutors of his decision before the killer's sentencing hearing, which is on June 12th, which is the day in between mine and my husband's birthdays. So you might have to wait a little bit to hear about what happens with that. At which time you will hear arguments on whether he should be sentenced as an adult or youth. Let me know if you want an update. I can give it to you. A finding that the murder was a terroristic act will help bolster the prosecution's argument that he should be sentenced as an adult. If convicted as a youth, the maximum sentence for first-degree murder, it's 10 years now. It used to be 15, I guess now. Even worse, guys, it's 10 years. That's the maximum sentence for first-degree murder if you're a youth. So that woman loses her entire rest of her life. Those two people that he also attacked would be traumatized forever, I'm sure. Their lives will never be the same. Who knows if they have injuries and whatnot. Again, that could be identifying information that they have not provided to us because of the publication ban. And then this asshat gets a whole 10 years, just a decade, and he'd probably be out in about 6 or 7. The judge concluded by saying it is a novel issue and needs a bit of examination on both sides. So today it was declared that it is not a terrorist attack. You know, this guy says, incels rise up. They rise up without being told to. That's the problem, isn't it? Don't know why so many are unemployed. They seem very motivated young men. Yes, I'm sure. Yes, Joe, a trench coat. I think it's fair to say if you see a black trench coat, just leave that whole area. So I personally, this is my personal belief, I personally think that it can constitute as a terrorist attack if, now hear me out, maybe not this one case, but I do think that if 3 or more people are injured, we should have a law that says that then it is considered a terrorist attack against women. Should he be tried as an adult? I think he should be, especially since he is now an adult. And I feel like at the age of 17, here in Canada, you're an adult at 18. There's not much difference between 17 and 18, right? You should know at 17 murder's wrong, just like you should know at 18 murder's wrong. I don't feel like there's much growing or learning that could have been done that very year, that would have meant that he's not as responsible being 17 instead of 18. So I personally think now he should be tried as an adult. But the one thing I will say that this should constitute as, that I have not heard it really talked about, is a hate crime. So right now they're saying it's not a terrorist attack. And I'm like, okay, I could maybe get down with that belief because technically one person died. And let's be real, unfortunately here in our world, and yeah, this is really based, okay? This is based. Here in our world, in order for it to be a terrorist attack, it would have to be more than one person that passes away. Just like with a serial killer, in order to be constituted a serial killer, you have to murder 3 people. Less than that, you're just a murderer. More than that, you're a serial killer. So I think that it would be fair to say the same in a case like this, where 3 or more people are murdered, and the guy's all like, yeah, incel rebellion, I hate women, blah, blah, blah. To me, that's just as much a terrorist attack against women as if some guy went and shot a bunch of black people at a college or something and said, F these N-words, okay? That, to me, is also a terrorist attack, right? Because I feel like that is definitely putting fear in everyone. Like, even the white people are running away from that, okay? So I think that there should be maybe some more rules around that. These are just my thoughts. I definitely want to hear what you think. Do you agree? Do you think this should have been a terrorist attack? But before I kind of wrap this up, let's just take a moment and go talk about what a hate crime is. Because I think most of us can agree that if it's not a terrorist attack, it is at the very least a hate crime towards women. And I personally think that he should have that added on to his charges. And then maybe they would ensure he gets tried as an adult. So let's just take a minute to talk about this, because here's the thing. Unfortunately, there are different definitions here in Canada. So here in Canada, instead of us having states, we have provinces. We have provincial laws and we have federal laws, just like you guys do. It's just they're called different things here. And unfortunately, here we seem to have different definitions of what constitutes a hate crime. So, for example, here in Ottawa, this is where I live. Ottawa police, they say a criminal offense committed against a person or property which is motivated by the suspect or offender's hate or bias against a racial, religious, ethnic, sexual orientation, or disability group. Gender should also be in there. I'm just saying. So that's how Ottawa defines it. Now, the thing is, we are in Toronto for this crime. This crime occurred in Toronto. So now let's look at Toronto. This is them here, the Metropolitan Toronto Police Force. They constitute a hate crime as a criminal offense committed against a person or property that is based solely upon the victim's race, religion, nationality, ethnic origin, sexual orientation, gender, or disability. So based on this definition, I believe that when an incel goes and commits murder towards women, it is a hate crime towards women. Equally, if an incel went and killed a bunch of people of a different race than they are, because again, not just white incels, there's black incels that hate the Indian incels, and the Indian incels hate the Asian incels, which then they hate they all hate the white incels because the white incels say that they're more important than all the other incels. There's a lot of racism going on. And I would think that that would also be fair. Even if they were like, oh, I'm an incel, blah, blah, blah. If they're killing people based on race, hate crime, automatic. So that's the definition where they are. Now, just to be sure here, let's look at these last three right here. This is important. So according to the Policing Standards Manual, which is the province of Ontario, this is the OPP, the Ontario Provincial Police. They are all given this manual. And this is the definition based on the manual. It says, a criminal offense committed against a person or property which is motivated by the suspect or offender's hate or bias against a racial, religious, ethnic, sexual orientation, or disability group. Then we go to the Ontario Provincial Police. Now, again, they get that manual, and then they also have their own definition. A little confusing, but it's pretty much the same. A criminal act against a person's or property that is based solely or in part upon the victim's race, religion, ethnicity, sexual orientation, or disability. Now, this might be part of the issue, and this might be why it's so hard here in Canada, even to charge anyone with a hate crime. It takes a lot. Usually they're just charged with the crime. I'm not saying it's right. I'm just saying the definition by the Royal Canadian Mounted Police, the RCMP, which do not just wear Mountie hats and ride around on horses. They do everything that your FBI does, just here in Canada, by the way. They have this definition. Sort of. It's sort of a definition. So this is the problem, I believe. Let me know what you think. The RCMP does not use the category hate crime, in quotations, in any formal way. However, some hate crimes are clearly addressed by the National Security Investigation sections of the RCMP. Criminal, political, or religious extremism, for example, can take a form that most people would recognize as a hate crime. Most of the hate crimes described in this report fall within the ambit of the provincial or municipal police services, rather than within the jurisdiction of the RCMP in its federal role. And when you commit a murder, you tend to deal with the RCMP more than the OPP at that point. Although the RCMP does gather information relating to ideologically motivated serious crime, statistics are not routinely compiled on criminal incidents that were motivated by hatred. And I think we need to start doing that. I think that's a problem. And maybe if we did more of that, then it would be easier for us as a society to then charge people with hate crimes if there are people out here going around killing people because of their race or killing people because of their gender. They just sum it up by saying, one critical question springs out from this short list: how inclusive should the definition of hate crime be? And I think that that is a good question. There are clear differences between the definition used in Toronto and Edmonton, for example, in which the act must have been based solely on some victim characteristic, and the broader definition in which the words in whole or in part are used. Clearly, a uniform definition is necessary if the statistics are to be comparable across different provinces. And that's why I say that I do believe that the main problem lies here with the RCMP. If they would come up with a proper definition and then the rest of us would base our definitions on that, it would be easier here. You would think it would be easy to charge someone with a hate crime here in Canada, but it is not. But to me, this is a hate crime. If you are committing a crime, no matter what the crime is, but especially murder, okay, against people based on their race, their gender, their sexual orientation, their ethnicity, etc., to me, it should automatically equate as a hate crime. And I also think that it should be considered a terrorist attack, especially if several people lose their lives, and that this incel should be tried as an adult, especially since he's an adult now, and he was pretty much an adult at the time of the crime. What if the incel identifies as a woman? Is it still a hate group? It is, actually. There are femcels, and there is something called pink-pilled, which is the female version of incels that are black-pilled, in which they believe that they were just born ugly and will never find a man, and that none of the chads want them, and blah, 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 blah. They exist too, and yes, they would be a hate group against men. You see, I also stick up for rights for men. So I am not doing these streams on incels as some feminist man hater. I do not think that the incel community is good for men either, as it promotes nothing but toxic masculinity towards other men and a lot of falseness, okay? Just a lot of lies, a lot of bullshit. A lot of this is how you get girls, which is a lie, a lot of misogyny, a lot of racism. And trust me, the female incels are just as bad. They're the exact same as the male ones, although they got a vagina and some tits instead of a peen. That's the only difference. And there are probably even trans or non-binary incels. And I'm sure that they're just as bad as the men and the women that are incels, because it doesn't matter the gender of the person or who they're attracted to, because there's even gay incels, believe it or not. What matters is the ideology that they all hold, and they all hold a very, very dangerous one. As this stream kind of pointed out, as we talked about two very popular incel murders, we brushed a bit over Elliot Rodger and a couple other incels that have harmed people based on this ideology and on wanting to spread hate with it. So really, what do we not like here? Spreading hate. We don't like people that spread hate towards anyone or anything, no matter what the reason. So I am now going to ask all of you what you think. Do you think that this person, or even Alec that did the Toronto van incel murders, do you think that they should be charged as terrorists? Do you think that they should be charged with a hate crime? And do you think that teenager should be charged as an adult? Let me know down below if you're catching the replay. Joe says, well, I haven't asked any woman out in 29 and a half years. I know. You've almost been married for 30 years, Joe. You've almost been with your wife for 30 years. That is quite amazing. That is amazing. My husband and I are going on 10 years. 10 years this year in November. It has finally been a decade. I'm very, very happy. And I cannot wait for the next 20 years. So that one day, like you, I can say, I have not been with any other man in 30 years, or asked any man out in 30 years, or wanted any other man in 30 years, especially not an incel. See, incels don't get laid. Yeah, that helps. So I promise I'm not going to bother you again. I might upload the Warhammer video just so that I can kind of get all the incel stuff out of the way today, because we have other stuff to talk about going forward this week. So make sure that you like and sub and blah, blah, blah. Do all them YouTube things. Think about joining our fabulous, amazing members. All of the beautiful people do, and you don't want to be ugly like Elliot Rodger. Because to me, you got to be good on the inside in order to be good looking on the outside. All right? It's just the way it is. And no matter where you are or what you're doing, I hope that you have a fabulous, fabulous, fabulous rest of your evening. Again, my heart does go out to especially this poor woman that was a receptionist for the spa in which this asshole decided to come in with a sword and murder people, keep them in your thoughts. If you're religious, keep them in your prayers. And hopefully, we don't have many more of these to report because we can all study this and then figure out what the hell's wrong and maybe stop them from going crazy. I don't know. It's a nice thought, isn't it? Anyway, bye!